Today we are doing my Q2 releases ranked video, and I got really good feedback on the original video that I did for this, where I used sort of like a tier ranking version of this as opposed to just a straight up like 1 through however many, and also including some of the new releases that I've read that may not be advanced reader copies per se, but have come out so far this year. So this includes some catch up from Q1, but is mostly focused in the Q2 releases I read. And yeah, I'm glad you guys like this format. I think I like it too. It feels, I don't know, a little different, a little fresher. It's good to kind of mix things up every once in a while to keep things interesting for me, because if I'm interested, hopefully that means you guys will enjoy it as well. Okay, so we've got all of our books here. Just to remind you guys of what the ranking or tiering system here is. So the bottom is not recommended, meaning it's both a book that I didn't enjoy and that I don't see a wide audience for. So just like one that I don't think is a good example of its genre, or, you know, I just don't think is great. Not just for me, but for other people. That would go in not recommended. Not for me is I didn't necessarily love it, but I could see it having a better hit rate with someone else. Solid enjoyed it is exactly that. I liked it. I also think other people will enjoy it. I loved it, but you may not is one that really worked for me, but that I don't necessarily see a wide audience for, or I wouldn't recommend it without some caveats. That's the second highest. And then the highest is Yes, which is a book that both I enjoyed and that I think many other people would also very much enjoy if they like that genre. So, with that being said, let's get into it. Death of a Bookseller. I'm gonna put that in not for me. It is a good version of what it actually is, which I think is sort of a dark character study with some commentary about true crime and the mystery thriller genre. But I think it's not, I was expecting it to be more of a mystery than it in fact is. And therefore, I would say it's not for me, but I think it's a pretty good version of what it is. I will say though that The Last Word was completely for me, but I don't think will be for everyone because it is very campy. So I feel very similarly about The Last Word as I did about the writing retreat earlier this year, which is, this is over the top, this is camp. You may not like it for that reason, and I get that, but for me, it totally works. It's sort of a suspense, reverse misery would be how I would pitch it. And it's, like I said, very over the top tonally. So if that appeals to you and you like sort of a metatextual quality to it, I think you would enjoy, but I'm not sure if that's everyone. Identity by Nora Roberts. I'm gonna put this in yes, and I'm gonna say that if you already like Nora Roberts, I think you're gonna be really happy with this year's standalone suspense release. Or if you're into the idea of a slow burn romantic suspense in general, I think that this is a pretty good version of what she does with that subgenre. And for me, it's getting back to what I like from her in this. The last few have just been kind of different, or just not, I don't know. Like The Obsession is my all-time favorite one. And that kind of model, that or like The Witness, there's a few of them that I'm like, yes, like Nora, do this. And this one I feel like is kind of getting more back to that. So I think people will really enjoy that one. In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. You know, I'm gonna put it in not for me. It's not bad, but I think I've just realized that I have the wrong expectations for TJ Klune based on The House in the Cerulean Sea, because that was the first book I read from him. And from it, I have expected sort of cozy or quirky fantasy with a strong romantic element, and that's just, I don't think that's necessarily really what his gig is. The Lives of Puppets I would describe as a sci-fi dystopia version of Pinocchio, and there is a romantic element. There is some of the kind of like coziness from the character work, not really, like that's not really the vibe. So I don't recommend it, but I just don't think it's for me for what I have wanted from him. And I think I'm just needing to like reset my expectations about what I want from him. Sisters of the Lost Nation by Nick Medina, I would say is solid and that I enjoyed it. I think this is really good as a debut. I always, you know, when I see a debut that I think is successful, that's always exciting. I think that it pitched kind of as horror, but I would tell you it's more of a thriller. And I think it's a very similar kind of like type of thriller as Firekeeper's Daughter from Angeline Boulley in terms of missing and dead Indigenous women and girls. That is really kind of what this is exploring. So if you're cool with sort of a slow burnish thriller with some horror elements and that comp title is interesting to you, then I would definitely recommend this. I think it is definitely pretty solid as a debut. And then Love Theoretically, I would also put in solid, enjoyed it. I don't think that this is the best version of what Ali Hazelwood does. I think when I was reviewing this originally, what I said is on paper, the marriage of the external conflict and the internal conflict makes sense, but I don't think it fully came together as a cohesive book. It is a heroine in STEM. It is about sort of like the biases against women in higher education, especially in sort of like science, academia, and just the difficulties and prejudices in that hiring process. It's got kind of a fake dating element and sort of like a hate to love-ish dynamic. So I think it's still really fun if you like Ali Hazelwood's writing style, which I do, but I don't think it's her best one. I would say it's solid if you like her, but not a standout. Ooh, I actually haven't finished the book that wouldn't burn, so let's quietly push this over to the side and I will include that in the next round of this that I do. Spring's Arcana, I'm gonna put in not for me because I just could not get into the writing style. It's a nice writing voice, more kind of like hot, like mannered or kind of a literary tone for what in my opinion is more like genre commercial fiction, because it's like a urban fantasy. So it's the mythology is Russian death gods. So that's cool. But from that, I kind of want the more wry authorial voice, and that's just not really what is happening in this book. So if you're not put off by that, I think that this could be worth seeking out. I DNF'd it because that's just not what I want from this kind of book. So there you go. Just When to Spar, I would say, is solid, enjoyed it. I think it's a good version of a historical romance that has sort of a light comedic touch. I will say that in this particular one, I did not necessarily find the romance wholly convincing, or I didn't feel that they had like a huge chemistry between them, but I think the overall friend and family dynamics are lovely, and their relationship as friends I definitely bought. And it's sort of a take on a gothic romance of this era, so think maybe sort of a light homage to something like Northanger Abbey. So yeah, I would recommend it, but it's not my favorite from this author, but I think that it is still quite enjoyable. Spitehouse, again, solid, enjoyed it. Another debut that I think is really successful. It's a haunted house story. I think you can tell this is a debut in terms of how some of the pacing works and in the choice of the author to have so many points of view, which I don't think was the strongest choice. But I think there's a lot of interesting ideas in here about family, about racism, about what it means to be haunted. The typical haunted house kind of themes. I think this hits pretty well. And all in all, I did think that this was a strong debut and I would recommend it. I think it's worth at least trying to see if you can get on with it. Untethered Sky, I'm gonna go with yes, because I think this is a really strong, successful version of a fantasy novella. So this is one from Fonda Lee, who wrote the Jade City trilogy. I forget what that one is called. The Green Bone Saga, that's what it's called. So this is, I think, her first thing since having written that trilogy. It's a novella. I thought it was gonna be more of a revenge story, and there is an element of that, but it's more of a sort of like ye fantasy creature, the bond between ye fantasy creature and their gender story, and I really liked it for that. I think it covers time, like a lot of time, in a very effective way, and yeah, I just thought it was a really good version of a novella. It had the right amount of story, the right amount of world building, etc. So I really enjoyed it, and I think that if you like that kind of fantasy novella, it's worth picking up. What the Hex, I'm going to say I loved it, but you may not. This series, Jessica Clare, my love for her is very much rooted in her sense of humor and her sense of camp, and that just is not going to click for everyone. This is a paranormal romance, which is witches and their familiars, and this one has a fake dating trope, but I think that the stakes for the fake dating make a lot more sense than some of them do. And it's just so over the top. Once I realized what was happening, every time the dude conjures a spell, it just really made me laugh. And so yeah, this humor is always subjective, so it may not be for everyone, but it definitely worked for me. I would also put The Golden Spoon as solid, enjoyed it. This is a cozy mystery, I would say, but it's not overly twee, which is something I really respond to in cozy mystery, is when it has that feeling, some of the like trappings of a small town or of a kind of close-knit group of people, but it doesn't veer into sort of cutesiness or over-the-top twee-ness. That's a really happy medium for me in a cozy. And this one is a send-up of the Great British Bake Off, but like an American version set in this old house in Vermont. And I don't know that the mystery was the most successful part of it, but it is a kind of isolation trope, and it just had a lot of elements to it that I found enjoyable. Even if it wasn't like my favorite, I, had a really good time reading it while I was reading it. So solid. Enjoyed it. And then 0 Days, again, solid, enjoyed it. I feel like I'm becoming a broken record here. This is Ruth Ware's take on sort of the fugitive type story, which is different for her. It's got the action adventure-y vibe. I don't know that that's her most successful mode, but I think I said this when I was reviewing it originally. I always am hesitant to be like, so-and-so, stay in your lane, don't try anything new, because I don't know, if I were an author, I wouldn't enjoy that. I think part of how writing stays fresh and fun for people, or people keep interest in being a writer, is via trying new things. And I think that it totally makes sense for her to kind of veer into more of a suspense or action adventure kind of story. It's just not my favorite mode from her. I don't think it was like as successful as some of her mystery stuff. So yeah, I think it's fun as a beach read, but I don't think it's her best one. So from what I've read of Ruth Ware, I would not say this is her biggest success, but it is still fun and, solid. I say solid, enjoyed it. God, I feel like I'm just becoming a broken record here. This is my least favorite Emily Henry so far, and it is the book that I think is least qualifying to be considered as a genre romance. So take that for what it's worth. Emily Henry, I think, has a very distinctive and lovely writing style that is still present in this book. She, is dealing with a lot of, I think relevant topics that would often get covered in the subgenre that used to be called chick lit or women's fiction. So I don't know. I think that this is a successful book, and I do think it is solid, but it's my personal least favorite from her. And I think if you did not like, oh God, what was that second one with the orange cover? I can see it in my head. I can't remember what it is right now. But her second book is the one that I think this is like, as opposed to Beach Read and Book Lovers, I think, are similar. This is similar to her second one. And I didn't necessarily love that one, and this one I liked even a little bit less. But again, all that being said, I still think this is solid, just not my favorite. Not for me is Kiss Me Mi Amor by Alana Quintana Albertson, I think is the author, because I think that the writing was just super flat for me. So if you don't care about that as much in a romance, I could see somebody enjoying this, but the writing really was not for me. I did not feel the chemistry between the characters, even though I think on paper there was a lot of stuff in here that I really liked. Some of the stuff about sustainable, ethical agriculture, I thought that was an interesting angle. Some of the family dynamics I thought were interesting, but I don't know. The romance itself did not work for me. They're solid, enjoyed it. I've got a lot of these this time. Okay, The Witch King by Martha Wells, I don't think is her best book I've read. It is the first fantasy novel I've read from her, and I will say I'm finding in general, I think she paces things better in a novella. Like, this felt a little long to me, but it has necromancy stuff. It has her distinctive kind of snarky voice in it. So if that stuff appeals to you, I think it's worth picking up, but I would not say it's my favorite from her. And I'm curious, I've got City of Bones from her, which is a re-release coming out in the fall that I'm going to read. And I wonder how I'll do with that one in comparison to this, because it is also fantasy, so it'll be my second fantasy from her. Okay, controversy. I'm gonna say my first not recommended of this list is I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai. Now, if you watch this channel, you know that I was bamboozled into reading this because this has been on mystery lists for 2023 releases, and I would argue that it is not really a mystery or thriller. I did DNF it at about 20%, so there's your caveat, but from what I could tell, I don't think it was a mystery thriller, really. I hated the writing, but even beyond that, I don't recommend it because I think that if you're looking for something that's literary, this is not what I would recommend to you. So I guess the only people I would recommend this to, and I say this having gotten some feedback from people who are more contemporary literary fiction readers. I used to be. I don't really read a ton of that these days, and if I get the itch for something literary, I tend towards short stories or classics more than I do just sort of general contemporary literary fiction. But I got some feedback from those of you who do read a little bit more of that, who had read this book, and most of you seem to agree with me. So I don't think that this has a wide appeal, which is why I'm very puzzled why they're pushing this book. But I will say that if you are a literary reader and you're looking for something that's literary with a little bit more plot than you sometimes get, that's really the only people I would recommend this to. And again, I feel like my comment section has kind of validated that sense I had, so I appreciate that feedback. I would also not recommend I Married a Dryad. Now, you guys know, if you watch this channel, that I love the I Married a series. I think it's called the Prime Mating Agency series, whatever, by Regine Abel. But I Married a Dryad, I could not. It was just, so Regine Abel, part of what's cool about this series is it gives her the chance to build these different cultures and these different kind of interesting biologies and how they interact. Like, it's an interesting project she has of building different cultures and their mating stuff. And I appreciate the inventiveness. In this case, it was way too much emphasis on the world building to the detriment of the relationship building as a romance. And some of the, I'm down for a weird alien peen. We know this if you were watching my channel. This was just, I don't know, especially once we got to the way that the birthing in this happened, I just couldn't. It was too much for me. It was not sexy. It was just, I think if this was just a sci-fi, I could recommend it. But as a sci-fi romance, I just don't think I can recommend this to people. This is the least successful, I think, in her series to date. So, What Lies in the Woods, I would say is solid. Enjoyed it. I would recommend this for people who are interested, if you've been a YA mystery thriller reader and you're looking to get into adult. Because Kate Alice Marshall has written YA thriller and horror, I think that some of the tropes that are happening in this adult version are very similar to some YA tropes, and so that would be like familiar for people. I don't know that this is the most surprising book, but I think that it's well executed, and I'm finding that I really like the way she does her character work. So for me, that was more what was keeping me turning the pages. When She's Wary, I'm gonna put as yes, because I think that if you like a sci-fi romance novella, in terms of the amount of plot that there is in that kind of story and the level of world building or character development you're gonna get, I think that you would like this. I really like this quite a bit. And actually, I'll just say When She's Fearless, I would put as solid, but this was a pair of novellas. It has two brothers, each of them getting their romance. And it's really an exploration of two women who have had really a lot of trauma. They are Earth women who have been kidnapped and enslaved. So they've gone through some stuff, They have opposite responses. When She's Wary, our heroine is like, you will never hurt me again. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Uber, just on guard all the time, doesn't know how to let people in. And When She's Fearless, the heroine is more, life is short. I've seen how bad life can be, and I just want to try to enjoy every moment while I have it. So I just thought that was an interesting kind of thought experiment, and I think When She's Wary is the more successful of the two because it has a little bit more conflict to it, so it felt more rounded as a story. But I thought they were both really good, and I particularly would recommend When She's Wary. The Wellness Trap is the one that I just finished yesterday, and I would recommend it. I think it's solid. I don't think it's as good as Anti-Diet. And I will say, I think some of the kind of specifics of her argumentation I don't know about, but the macro level picture I was into. In general, I'm trying to be more cautious about recommending anything related to health, wellness, dieting, all of that, because I just think I have not been always super circumspect about that in the past. So I'm just gonna leave it there. Yeah, my high level opinion on this is I still enjoyed this and thought it was, you know, an interesting read. I probably preferred Anti-Diet to it. And then finally, I'm gonna put Bethia as not for me. I just don't like this character, and so I DNF'd it because I just don't like her. Her chaotic energy is not for me. I don't enjoy it. And it's a character type Ruby Dixon has done in a few different of her series, and it's never a character type I enjoy. So getting an entire book of her is just not for me. And there we go. Okay, this time around, not as many hits, I feel like. Am I crazy? Yeah, last time it was more weighted towards the top. So I guess tentative findings are Q1 was a little stronger than Q2, but I stand by these three. I think that these are three really, you know, good ones, and Solid enjoyed it. Means I didn't have a bad time. It just wasn't necessarily a huge standout. So yeah, okay. I will see you in Q3, where hopefully I will have finished the book that wouldn't burn, so that we can include that one. So yeah, let me know what you thought about any of these books. Let me know if you have any 2023 releases that you have either not gotten to, it's already come out and you've not gotten to it yet, but you keep meaning to, or what you're most excited about for the rest of the year, if there's any release that you're particularly interested in. Let me know that in the comments below. And yeah, I think that that will do it for me for now. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that that will do it. I hope you are having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!